Hi there, everybody. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. Frank Tomaino is our guest, and whenever Frank comes in, we talk about local history. Frank, of course, continues to write his history column for the Observer-Dispatch, and he continues being an active trustee down at the United County History Center. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Joe.
You know, one of the things that I was thinking about the other day, Frank, there was a time when in Utica and other cities, you had, on every corner, you had a drugstore, you had a grocery store, you had a gas station.
And a barbershop.
And a barbershop, yeah. There weren't movie theaters in every corner, but they had movie theaters in every neighborhood.
Just about every neighborhood, including Utica,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah.
I grew up in East Utica, and we had the Rialto and the family. The Rialto was on Nickel and Lansing Street, and the family was on Bleecker near Kossuth.
What's in those spots now, Frank?
Well, the Rialto, it's just not a parking lot. They tore it
Vacant
down,
lot.
and that was it. It's a lot of grass there, but
Yeah.
that's about it. On the family was torn down, and I don't think anything was ever built in this place. But they were too popular, as all neighborhood theaters were popular. I ran in my column a while back a photograph of the old Oneida, which was on Park Ave, right near Oneida Square, just a couple doors below the fire station. A very popular theater, and people are interested in the old theaters. There's still many of us that are, and in my caption, I got quite a few emails that I made a mistake. I had said in my column that you had the first run theaters, the Utica, Olympic, Avon, and the Stanley. And then after the movies ran there, it went to the Oneida and the Uptown before the movies went to the neighborhood theaters. I got a couple of emails from people who knew what they were talking about, that the Uptown got the movies right after the first run theaters got them, but not the Oneida. The Oneida was like a neighborhood theater, so maybe I was wrong there. But there were so many in Utica.
The thing, when you mentioned the Rialto, and that was in East Utica, so I didn't get over there very often, but the couple times that I did go to the Rialto, I heard a sound, and the sound I heard at the Rialto was smashing
Dishes.
People would drop their dishes.
Yeah. You know, people don't realize that in the middle of the Depression, 1935-36, I think the population of the United States was about 130 million. About 100 million went to movies.
Yeah.
You know, for a dime, you forget your troubles for a couple of hours. But then by the late 30s, radio became very, very popular. You know, Jack Benny, Fibber McGee and Molly, Bob Hope. And the attendance at movie theaters started to drop. So one of the ways to attract, moviegoers, that many of the neighborhood theaters anyway began, I know the Rialto and I believe the Highland too, began giving out dinnerware on Mondays and Tuesdays.
And you got a piece every time you went,
Yeah,
right?
you got a cup, the next week a saucer. And I understand Fred Capizella, who you've had on your show many times, said that there are still some people have the complete set. They were a well-made dinnerware. It wasn't anything cheap, and it worked. You know, began attracting some moviegoers, and then later, television started coming out. In the early '40s, and again, moviegoers were staying home to watch television, and again, the theaters began having things like Screeno and Blotto and Lotto. So in my column a while back, I used it was a movie ad of the Oneida Theater, Utica's most glamorous theater, they said. It was a nice theater. And on the top it said, Screeno, you could win $60, which was a lot of money in those days.
Sure.
but it was used to attract people back to the movies.
You know, when I was going to the movies as a young boy, and granted it was a long time ago, but it was a quarter, and you got to see a cartoon, a newsreel, and a double feature for a quarter.
Yeah. If you went on Saturday, there was what we used to call chapters, but it was like a serial. You're right, cartoons and come-in attractions, which were, and when I started going to the movie theaters before you, and when I started going, say, to Rialto, many times, I think it was 11 cents when I started, we would pay Indian head pennies. They were all over the place. Today, I don't know, I'm not a coin collector, but I guess they're worth a lot of money.
The remark about their self-promotion about the Oneida being the most glamorous theater in Utica, you would take exception with that, yes?
Oh, sure. I mean, especially, with the Stanley there, and even the Avon was a nice theater, but the Stanley, of course. But I think the Oneida was the only one. I can't remember any other, like the Rialto was not the most glamorous theater by any means.
And I thought the Olympic was a nice theater.
Yeah, but the Olympic was truly a movie house.
Yeah.
It was for movies only, where the Stanley and the Avon and the Utica had big stages. And before the Stanley was built in 1928, the Avon really was a performing arts center. You had Broadway plays, the Utica Symphony Orchestra had a huge stage. And later it built, it was on Lafayette Street, by the way, almost kitty corner from the Olympic. And and later they built dressing rooms, in the basement there. And it had Broadway, again, and many well-known speakers. William Jennings Bryan, who was running for president, they spoke at the Avon. And the women's suffrage movement in the 19-teens, the Olympic opened, the Avon opened in 1911. The women's suffrage movement, when they had big conventions, it would be at the Avon Theater. When they built the Olympic, strictly had a small little stage, but it was strictly a movie house.
When you mentioned the Avon and the Utica and the Olympic, I can remember standing on the corner of Lafayette and
Washington.
Standing on that corner, it would be the southeast corner, and being able to look at the marquees of all three
You're right.
movie houses.
Yeah, they were that close together.
And deciding on what movie you wanted to go see.
Yeah, I had something in my column a while back, the old Utica, by the 1940s and 50s, it had become run down, and they had first-run movies, but nothing like the Avon, the Stanley, and but it was the Lumber Theater, and would attract, again, Broadway plays, had a big stage, dressing rooms. So the Utica, the Avon, and the Stanley were the three.
I've got a theater that I was never in. The building is still there. When we come back, I'll see if you remember it and what was in there. Frank Tomaino's our guest. We're talking about Utica's movie houses. Lots more to talk about. Short break, right back.